Across the Middle East and North Africa, jobless rates among the young average 25%. That's almost 8% higher than the average of developed countries. A growing workforce, but a stagnant economy. The scenario in many Arab countries, where the educated and unemployed young decide not to sit idly by. They've not only taken to the streets, they're also using social media in ways that allow them to communicate, organize, recruit, and evade strict controls on mainstream media to get their message of resistance out to the wider world.
Could this revolution have happened without Twitter, Facebook, the internet?
Surely, yes. I think the speed at which it would have happened would have probably been a lot slower. I think what clearly has happened is Facebook and Twitter play slightly different roles. Facebook is used in the organization of it. Twitter is used in the amplification of it.
The internet never causes revolution. I mean, the internet doesn't cause revolution. That's just not what the internet does. But the internet can facilitate organization when the moment has come. And in the case of Egypt, what's very interesting about Egypt is that the internet was playing a role in Egypt for years before the revolution. That's the part of the story that we don't really talk about. Everybody talks about the role of social media in this very short period of time, but Egyptians, like the people in my book, on the internet were overcoming these, fear and apathy and isolation. There was a very active Egyptian internet, and they were organizing online, and they were laying the groundwork for collective action. So this didn't happen overnight. They were building connections abroad, they were building connections with each other.
Absolutely, and there's a very important dynamic at play, and that is how much power does the social media give to the people, and how much does it give to the state? And a lot of people, when they look at these revolutions, they say it gives all power to the people. And it seems that way sometimes. But the government owns the pipes, right? So the government can counteract that. And we saw in Tunisia, right, the government actually hacked the Facebook passwords of everybody in the country. Right? So if that had gone on longer, they would have been able to do a lot of damage. In Iran, it seemed like Facebook is, going to bring the government down, but it didn't. And why is that? Well, it's partly because the government infiltrated. The government was able to figure out how these networks worked, and then was able to slow down the revolution, the protest movements through that. So technology, it's a tool could be a tool for one side or could be a tool for the other.
The idea of being part of a public square is the idea that which you have to contribute is not necessarily taken from you or manipulated from you in ways that you can't necessarily see. The idea that social media platforms, which each have their own affordances, their own algorithms, and their own political economies, meaning the commercial agendas behind it, are substitutes for public squares, is a false idea. So what I want to do is just very quickly shift the kind of way we think about it to first start with the ideas of an activist or an activist collective. How would an activist collective use the various tools that exist around them in the world to actually push out and support their agenda? So what I've seen in action with activist groups that were extremely popular on social media, such as Mossadegh within Egypt, is they were very popular on social media, but they weren't bowing to the temple of those various tools or the corporations behind them. They were exploiting different platforms to navigate and manipulate different types of networks. So they were using certain platforms to publicize their cause very widely, but they weren't trusting those platforms as ways to deal with private communications or even to access the vast majority of people in Egypt who weren't active social media users, right? So I think it's important that we invert the question somewhat, start with an activist intention or objective, and then think about how various tools with their limitations and possibilities might actually be part of their palette of trying to engage the world around them and make the world for the better.
And I think the best example, actually, of all is the Italian politician Beppe Grillo, who started an entire political movement solely based on well, that's not completely true, but that was built around meetup groups that were organized online and people then met offline. And he went from, in 2012, polling at 2 or 3% in opinion polls in Italy to becoming the leader of the, depending how you measure it, the largest or the second largest single party, 25% of the vote in the 2013 election in Italy, without giving an interview to any mainstream outlets whatsoever. And so different people see the role of social media in very different ways. And these anti-establishment groups, who they see social media as such a liberating force, a completely different, unmediated way that they can get their truth out to people, that they can coordinate, as you mentioned, very cheaply, at very low cost, in a way they never would have been able to before, without all the huge apparatus that big political established parties need. And so the role that social media is playing in politics, I don't think is the one that a lot of people expected.
After analysing the flow of information, the researchers discovered that news finds its way to people through a number of prominent and influential opinion leaders. They found considerable support for the two-step flow of information. Almost half the information that originates from the media passes to the masses indirectly via a diffuse intermediate layer of opinion leaders who, although classified as ordinary users, are more connected and more exposed to the media than their followers.